Welcome to the Straight Red Card, and today we want to welcome a man who needs little introduction, Sports Illustrated's Grant Wahl. Grant, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah, now I did wonder if you ever got that call from the Cook Islands FA contact that I sent you for the FIFA nomination, because they promised me they'd come through for you.
You know, maybe I should have worked the South Pacific a little harder, even though it's actually kind of a bladder stronghold, is what I found. But, you know, the funny thing is that I honestly, part of me still wonders if I had a year or so to get ready for this, if I could have actually built some relationships and maybe persuade one of these FAs to nominate me. But it just did not happen, and you know, we finally just ran out of time.
Yeah, well, we're going to get to that a little bit later, but I wanted to start with the USA v. Paraguay and Argentina kind of summary. I know we're a little late on that, but I did want to get some general feelings from you. You know, I did agree with your article that Timothy Chandler looked like, you know, he could possibly be the future for us at right back. But I do wonder, you know, because we're Americans, we get excited and pretty zealous pretty quickly. He had two good performances, but is it okay to get excited about this right now, or should we be a little bit more cautious?
Well, I think the best way to describe, the best word to use to describe him is promising, you know, and that's something that implies having kind of a measured outlook on, you know, what this guy could be. This was a promising start. He's had a promising start in the Bundesliga. You know, we'll see what happens this summer, and if he's going to be part of the Gold Cup, it's likely he'll be part of the team, and we'll see how much playing time he gets, especially if Steve Cherundolo is healthy and have a good old-fashioned competition there. But you know, I just think American fans, maybe in general, and media at times too, needs to, you know, keep in mind these are small sample sizes we're seeing to this point with some of these younger players, and it'll take a little time to figure out if they're going to be long-term contributors.
When you guys keep talking about the right back option as competition to Cherundolo, but say in the Gold Cup if Cherundolo's back, I mean, would you possibly try him keep him at right mid, push Landon left, and push Dempsey up top?
That's certainly a possibility. That would be obviously a pretty major change in the tactical alignment, or at least the deployment of players within the alignment that they've been using. Right. And everyone knows that Donovan and Dempsey are pretty able to move to different spots of the field and contribute in those spots. Bob Bradley seems to have concluded over time that, you know, starting a game with Donovan and Dempsey on the wings, but giving them freedom to come inside and go forward and have a lot of freedom to go essentially anywhere while still keeping some defensive responsibilities is the way that he's gone. But we've seen Dempsey move up top during games for quite a while now. We've seen Donovan play up top before as well.
You know, and I want to applaud you because you're one of the few folks out there. And there were some folks on FFC that mentioned it as well, but not many pregame with Paraguay, that the 4-4-2 actually makes the most sense for us right now. And people seem to think the 4-4-2 is a boring formation. I personally don't think it is. I mean, how do you see it?
Well, the 4-4-2 is the formation the U.S. has had by far the most success in.
Yeah.
When you look at the Confederations Cup in 2009 and World Cup qualifying, that was almost exclusively what they used, and when they didn't, as they didn't in Costa Rica, they got hammered. So, you know, I think it's something that you look at the personnel, and the U.S. has, you know, recently over the last year and a half had kind of an excess of midfielders and not as many guys up top, especially since the Charlie Davies accident that Bob Bradley could count on. And so you can understand potentially why a five-man midfield might be a good way to get the best U.S. players on the field. But now suddenly we've seen again with Stu Holden's injury, that is a pretty big hit for the midfield. And what could have been a good lineup for a 4-2-3-1 with Holden in the middle of that three Now there really aren't too many options there, as you could see by Maurice Edu being the guy who was chosen to play very much out of position in that spot against Argentina. I kind of think a guy like Jose Torres, perhaps, maybe Benny Feilhaber, maybe Mix Diskerud could play in the middle of that three, but that's a lot to ask of those guys at this point. And so suddenly, with the emergence of Juan Agudelo, to potentially work well with Josie Altidore or somebody like Teal Bunbury up top, the 4-4-2 looks like it's probably going to be the way to go in the near future.
Right. And it doesn't have to be boring. I think that's the thing I think people need to realize. But I was going to ask because, kind of overshadowed by Chandler's performance and Agudelo's performance, I thought Tim Ream's performance was fantastic against Paraguay. Now, granted, maybe there wasn't a lot of pressure, but there were a lot of people, Nick Furchow, who was on here not long ago, who said, it's too early to say Chandler can play center back for the United States national.
Ream.
Or Ream, I'm sorry, did I say Chandler? It's too early to say that Tim Ream can play, center back for the United States. But I thought that Tim tipped that balance against Paraguay. He made me a believer rather than a disbeliever.
Well, I think he's certainly another promising guy, and maybe even a little bit more so right now than an Agudelo, just as in the sense that Agudelo is still just 18. We haven't seen him play many games, period. Whereas now we've seen Tim Ream play a full season's worth in MLS. We've seen him play several games with the national team. He's older than Agudelo because he went to college. And he seems like a guy that I think has a very good chance of starting at the Gold Cup. There's a huge contrast with Ream's ability to start the U.S. attack out of the back and to have poise on the ball and to make the right passes to a Michael Bradley or a Jermaine Jones so that they could be in a position to do something with the ball. And Oguchi Onyewu, unfortunately, against Argentina, we saw is not in a position where poise is a word you would use to describe him on the ball. And so it's unfortunate, but because I think he has potentially some very useful physical skills and can still very much be a part of the rotation at some point. But I'm very impressed with Ream, and it's interesting to me. I've had people point out, Ream does make mistakes sometimes with his passes. And yes, of course, he's not 100% perfect, but there's a real qualitative difference with his ability on the ball that you can see, and it doesn't take a great soccer mind to see that.
Right.
I do wish that the U.S. had a central defender with really good speed, and I don't think the U.S. has really had someone like that really since Eddie Pope. And I think that could be an issue in particular when the U.S. has to face some really talented, really fast forwards.
Yeah, I was actually somewhat impressed with, and we heard it from Nick too. Nick mentioned, hey, the guy's not fast enough to play CB, and that's a kind of a weakness. But I thought, maybe there were some instances versus Paraguay where we saw some of Tim Ream's speed, where he had to kind of cover the outside wings occasionally. And I was a little impressed by that.
He's not a tortoise out there. So I think that's something to keep in mind. And he does seem to have a pretty good idea of positioning and instinct on how to read a game and where to be on the field to make the most of his abilities. Right. We'll see how he progresses. Obviously, he's got a good situation in New York. I think it's a good thing for a lot of these young U.S. upcoming national team guys that they're in club positions that are good, whether it's Agudelo and Ream playing all the time for New York, whether it's Bunbury playing all the time for Kansas City, or whether it's Chandler playing all the time in Germany.
Right.
Just in with who they're working with as well. You have Agudelo, who's working side by side with Henry. You have Marquez working with Ream. I mean, it's great experience, and it's only going to rub off on them.
Yeah, so I think that's something that we'll see here how things go with them in the national team. But we're also going to see these guys every week doing their thing.
Yeah. Now, before we transition to the FIFA thing, because we want to do that here quickly, but I watched the RSL Saprissa both games. I thought it spoke miles for the quality maybe not just of RSL, but of MLS in general, because to me, over that 2-game period, RSL showed a sort of supremacy and overall quality we haven't really seen from an MLS team in the CONCACAF Champions League.
Yeah, they played good soccer, and for me, it's probably the most entertaining team in the league. Kansas City's very entertaining to watch as well, but RSL probably wins more games playing that way. And it's something that, I just spent a couple of days with Salt Lake, and, we've interviewed a lot of guys, including Jason Kreis, players on the team, and you get a real sense of chemistry and teamwork that they've created there ever since Kreis came in 2007. And it's important for them to play good soccer. I had a conversation with Dave Checketts, the owner, and he told me about a time in 2007 when Kreis was going through a rough stretch. They'd gone 7 games without a win, and they were in D.C. to play United and ended up totally bunkering in and getting a 0-0 tie. And Checketts said that he had a conversation with Kreis afterward in which he said, I don't want you playing that way. I don't want you trying to just get a result. Right. And it gave Kreis the confidence to play the way he wants to play, and that it was possible to get good results and play good soccer. But Checketts really seems to be one of these guys, as is Kreis, that feels like they have to entertain and not just win to stand out in the American market.
Yeah. Kind of a different change. I mean, that's nice to see.